I never imagined that one quiet night would change my whole life. Not because something dramatic exploded in front of me, but because something inside me finally broke. And sometimes, when something breaks, you understand things you never wanted to face. I still remember the cold tiles under my feet. I remember the silence of a hallway. And I remember the way my heart shook when my husband looked at me with eyes I no longer recognized. It was close to midnight. The whole neighborhood was asleep, the kind of deep, peaceful sleep that makes you feel even more alone when you're awake. And I was standing in our living room in nothing but my nightgown, trying to understand how the man I had loved for 10 years could suddenly look at me like I didn't belong there. He didn't scream. He didn't shout. But his voice was sharp enough to cut. "Get out," he said. "Go to your family." Just those words. Not angry. Not loud. Just final. At first, I laughed a little because I thought he was joking. We had argued, yes. But couples argue. People fight. And then they talk. And then things get better. That's what I believed. That's what I always believed. But his face didn't change. His eyes stayed cold. And it hit me like a slow wave. This wasn't a moment of anger. This wasn't something he would take back in the morning. He meant it. My hands were shaking as I tried to understand the reason. What had I done? What had happened? How did we reach this moment? But he didn't explain. He just stood there, waiting for me to leave like I was a stranger who had overstayed my welcome. When I stepped outside, the night air felt colder than I ever remembered. Not because the weather was cold, but because loneliness has a temperature of its own. And as I stood there in my thin nightgown, barefoot, scared, confused, and shivering, I realized something that hurt more than anything he had just said. I had nowhere to go. My family, my parents, my siblings were people I hadn't seen in years. Not because we hated each other, not because something terrible happened, but because life scattered us in different directions, and I had always told myself, I'll visit soon. I'll call soon. But I never did. Not enough. Not the way I should have. I stood there thinking about knocking on their door in the middle of the night, dressed like this, looking like this, broken, thrown out, unwanted. And the shame swallowed me whole. I didn't want them to see me like that. I didn't want to answer their questions. I didn't want to admit that the life I had painted in front of them was falling apart. So I stood in the driveway, hugging my arms around myself, looking at the dark street, wondering where a grown woman was supposed to go when her own husband told her to get out. That was when I heard a quiet sound. A door opening. I turned around slowly, embarrassed, unprepared, and unsure of what I would say. It was my neighbor. A man I had spoken to maybe 5 times in the last 3 years. A man I only knew by his first name, Aram. A man who always nodded politely when he saw me but never pushed for a conversation. He stood on his porch, his face soft with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I suddenly felt the weight of everything I had been holding inside for years. He stepped closer but kept his distance, giving me space. "Do you need help?" he asked again, even softer this time. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Because the truth was, I did need help. But I had been pretending for so long that everything was fine, that I no longer knew how to admit it. I felt tears burning the back of my eyes, but I blinked fast to stop them. "I'm fine," I whispered. Because that's what we're taught to say, isn't it? Even when we're anything but fine. He looked at me quietly for a moment, like he could see everything I was trying to hide. "You're not fine," he said. And those simple words, they cracked something in me. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself as a cold breeze moved through the street. My nightgown fluttered a little, and that's when he finally said, "You shouldn't be outside like this. Please come sit on my porch. Just until you feel okay." I knew it might look strange. I knew people could misunderstand. But in that moment, I didn't care about the neighbors. I didn't care about the world. I just wanted to feel human again. So I nodded. He walked beside me, slowly, not touching me, not crowding me, just being there. When I sat down on the wooden bench outside his house, the warmth of the little porch light fell over me, making me feel less invisible. He didn't ask questions. He didn't lecture me. He didn't judge me. He just sat a few steps away and said quietly, "You don't have to talk. Just breathe." So I breathed. For the first time that night, I let myself breathe. And slowly, my shoulders relaxed. My heartbeat steadied. The dizziness in my head faded a little. After a few minutes, he stood up and said, "I'll bring you a blanket. It's cold." Before I could refuse, he went inside and returned with a soft, clean blanket. He didn't wrap it around me, he handed it to me with both hands, like he didn't want to cross any line. I whispered a thank you. He nodded. And then he surprised me. He didn't ask why I was outside. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't say he heard anything earlier. He simply said, "Sometimes people forget how much they matter. Sometimes they need a place to breathe." It was odd how those words found a place inside me. For the last few years, I had felt like I was shrinking. Like my voice was slowly fading inside my marriage. Like my dreams were becoming smaller and my presence lighter. Not because my husband yelled at me or mistreated me every day, no. It was quieter than that. It was subtle. The kind of neglect that hides in small moments. A forgotten dinner. A rushed conversation. A distracted nod. A cold silence. A birthday missed. A promise delayed. And now here I was, sitting on a neighbor's porch at midnight, wrapped in his blanket, feeling seen for the first time in a long time. That night, something strange happened. Not something dramatic. Not something loud. Just something honest. I realized how lonely I had become. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes. The night slowly softened. A few leaves moved across the street. A dog barked in the distance. It was peaceful in a sad sort of way. Finally, he spoke. "You can stay here for a while if you need to. I won't let you sit outside like this all night." I looked at his face, searching for any sign of discomfort or hidden intentions. But his expression stayed calm, steady, and respectful. "I don't want to bother you," I whispered. "You're not bothering me," he said. "People help people. That's how it should be." Those words felt like a warm cup of tea in my chest. Still, I hesitated. I was raised to keep my problems private, to not step into anyone's space, to handle everything quietly. But that night, my pride had already cracked, and my heart was too tired to pretend I was okay. So I whispered, "Can I stay just until I decide what to do?" He nodded once. "Of course." He opened the door slowly, letting me walk inside first. The house smelled like fresh soap and warm tea. It was clean, simple, and peaceful, like a place where silence wasn't heavy. He offered me water. I drank it with trembling hands. Then he said, softly, "You can take the guest room. I'll stay awake in the living room. If you need anything, just knock once. I won't ask questions unless you want to talk." No one had spoken to me with that kind of kindness in a long time. Not even my husband. I nodded again. My voice felt too small to use. He led me to the guest room, turned on a small lamp, and placed the blanket from outside on the bed. "Try to rest," he said quietly. "You're safe here." Safe. What a strange word. What a painful word. Because I realized I hadn't felt safe in my own home for a long time. After he closed the door, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the soft light. Tears finally fell, but quietly, like they were tired too. I wasn't crying because of him. I wasn't crying because of the cold night. I wasn't crying because of embarrassment. I was crying because for the first time in years, someone looked at me and said, without words, "You matter." And maybe that was all I had been needing. That night, before I lay down, I whispered to myself, "How did I get here?" And that was the beginning of everything that followed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the soft guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. My thoughts wandered like lost birds, touching memories I had avoided for too long. It was strange being in another person's home. Strange, but comforting. I felt like a visitor in my own life, looking at everything from the outside for the very first time. I thought about the day I married my husband. The smiles, the promises, the excitement. I could still hear myself saying, "We will always stand by each other." But somewhere along the years, we stopped standing side by side. He moved ahead. I stayed behind. And neither of us tried to close the distance. We had been drifting, silently, calmly, like two boats tied to the same dock but slowly loosening their ropes. I hadn't noticed how far apart we had become until the moment he told me to leave. The house I once thought was mine suddenly didn't feel like my home anymore. Around dawn, I finally fell asleep for a short while. When I woke up, soft daylight was coming through the window. The blanket was still wrapped around me, holding the faint warmth of the night before. I sat up slowly, feeling the heaviness of everything settle again. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then everything came back: my nightgown, the freezing backyard, his voice telling me to get out, and Aram's quiet porch light. I stood up and walked to the mirror on the wall. My hair was messy. My eyes were puffy. My face looked tired, older, and worn out in a way I never wanted to admit. I had spent years brushing away small disappointments, hiding large ones, and pretending everything was okay. I always told myself, tomorrow will be better. He is just stressed. He is tired. I shouldn't complain. But sometimes, putting yourself last doesn't make you kind, it makes you invisible. I touched the mirror gently, as if I could reach the woman inside and tell her she deserved more than just being tolerated. After a few minutes, I slowly opened the guest room door. The house was quiet. I expected Aram to still be asleep, but he was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. When he saw me, he didn't show surprise or curiosity. He simply nodded, like it was the most normal thing in the world for me to be standing there in his house wearing a nightgown. "Good morning," he said softly. I nodded back. "Good morning." "Tea?" he asked. I hesitated, but then I nodded again. He poured a cup for me and slid it across the table. I wrapped both hands around it, soaking up the warmth. There was silence between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the quiet of two people who didn't want to disturb the fragile calm that had settled over the room. After a few sips, he finally said, "Do you want to talk? If you don't, that's okay too." My throat tightened. How long had it been since someone asked me that without expecting anything in return? "I don't know where to start," I whispered. "You can start anywhere," he said. "Or you can rest more. You choose." His gentleness broke something again, but softer this time. I don't know what to do next," I said, my voice barely above a murmur. He didn't answer immediately. He just listened. Really listened. It felt strange, almost unreal. "It's okay not to know," he finally said. "Sometimes you just take the next small step, one at a time." I nodded, though tears threatened again. "Do you need clothes? I can ask my sister to drop something off," he offered. His kindness made my chest ache, but I didn't want to involve anyone else. Not yet. "No," I whispered quickly. "This is fine. I need time to think." "Take all the time you need," he said quietly. Around noon, I finally gathered the courage to step outside and walk toward my house. I didn't want to talk to my husband, but I needed my things. At least a few clothes, my phone charger, some essentials. Aram didn't stop me or offer to come with me. He simply said, "If you need a place to return to, the door will be open." And somehow, those words gave me the strength to walk down the driveway. The moment I reached the front door, my fingers froze above the handle. I didn't know what version of my husband I would find inside. The quiet one, the tired one, the cold one, or the one who kicked me out. The door wasn't locked. It opened too easily. Too quietly. The living room looked exactly the same as last night, as if nothing had happened. A part of me wanted to believe, maybe he regretted it. Maybe he would apologize. Maybe he didn't mean it. But when he walked into the room, the expression on his face erased all those maybes. He didn't look relieved to see me. He didn't look worried. He didn't even look angry. He just looked distant. "You came back," he said flatly. "Just to get some clothes?" I whispered. He nodded once. No emotion. No softness. No guilt. In that moment, something inside me grew quiet, not hurt, not anger, just acceptance. He didn't ask where I spent the night. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't even ask why I was still in my nightgown. It was like I was a guest in the house, not his wife. I walked past him and went to our bedroom. The room felt unfamiliar, even though every corner was filled with things I had chosen. I packed a small bag, 2 sets of clothes, a toothbrush, my phone charger, and a few personal things. While I folded a sweater, I heard footsteps behind me. He was standing at the doorway, watching me. "You don't have to leave," he said suddenly. But his voice wasn't soft. It wasn't tender. It wasn't regretful. It sounded like he was offering something out of obligation, not desire. I stopped folding and looked up at him. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady. He shrugged. "I don't know." Those 3 words felt heavier than the night before. He didn't know. He didn't know if he wanted me here. He didn't know if he cared enough to fix things. He didn't know if our marriage meant anything to him anymore. And that uncertainty hurt more than anger ever could. "I think I should stay away for a while," I said quietly. He didn't protest. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't try to reassure me. He just nodded. A small, careless nod. And that was my answer. When I walked out of the house with my small bag, the sun felt too bright. Like I was stepping out of one life and into another without any warning. Aram was sitting on his porch again. He looked up when he saw me walking back. He didn't ask what happened. He simply stood up and opened the door again. "Guest room is ready," he said. And I stepped inside without saying a word. Not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't trust my voice not to break. That afternoon, as I sat in the guest room folding the few clothes I brought, my mind drifted to memories quiet, ordinary memories that now carried new meaning. Like the day my husband forgot our anniversary and said he was too busy. Or the mornings he left for work without saying goodbye. Or the nights he came home late and went straight to his phone. Or the times he brushed off my feelings with, "You think too much." At the time, I told myself those things didn't matter. That all marriages go through phases. That I should be patient. That I should understand him. But now, sitting in another man's home because my own husband pushed me out, I realized something painful. I had been lonely long before last night. The house, the routine, the quiet dinners, the empty conversations, everything had been slowly draining the color out of my life. And I had been pretending I didn't notice. Later that evening, Aram knocked softly on the door. "Dinner is ready," he said. I wasn't hungry, but I also didn't want to sit alone with my thoughts anymore. So I joined him at the table. He had cooked something simple, rice and vegetables. The smell was comforting. We ate in silence for a while. Then he finally spoke. "I hope you don't feel embarrassed," he said gently. "I do," I admitted. "It's okay," he said. "Being human isn't embarrassing." His words made my eyes sting again. I looked up at him. "Why are you being so kind?" I asked softly. He smiled faintly. "Because kindness is easy. And because everyone deserves a safe place when life gets heavy." No one had said something that gentle to me in years. Not my husband. Not my distant family. Not even myself. I realized then that sometimes we mistake endurance for strength. We think surviving sadness is proof of courage. We think keeping silent is noble. But real strength is letting yourself heal. And maybe, without knowing it, that night was the first step toward healing. That was the beginning of the rising conflict. The beginning of looking at my life with new eyes. The beginning of understanding that something had been wrong for a long time. And the beginning of learning that sometimes the people you least expect become the ones who help you stand again. The next few days passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. Not peaceful, not chaotic, just quiet. The kind of quiet where you feel every breath in your chest because there's nothing loud enough to cover it. I stayed in the guest room most of the time, unsure how long I would be there or what I was supposed to do next. Aram didn't ask questions, and he didn't act like I was a burden. He simply lived his life gently around me, making space without making me feel guilty. Every morning, he left a small tray with tea outside the guest room door. He didn't knock. He didn't wait for me to open it. He just placed it there and let me drink it whenever I woke up. Some mornings I picked it up right away. Other days, I stared at the closed door for a long time before touching it. It was strange how a simple gesture, like a warm cup of tea waiting for me, could make my eyes fill with tears. Not because of sadness, but because of the softness I had forgotten existed. On the fourth day, I finally worked up the courage to call my mother. The phone felt heavy in my hand. I hadn't spoken to her properly in almost a year. We exchanged occasional holiday messages, but the warmth we once had felt far away. When she answered, her voice was cheerful and unaware of everything happening. "Hello, dear. How are you?" My throat tightened so quickly I couldn't speak. "Hello? Are you there?" she asked again. I forced myself to breathe and finally whispered, "Mama." Her voice changed instantly. "Mira, what's wrong?" Just hearing her concern made something inside me crumble. I'm fine," I lied out of habit. "Mira," she said sternly, "you only call me Mira when you're trying not to cry. Tell me what happened." I shut my eyes, and my voice trembled. "I left home." A long silence followed. "Left," she repeated softly. "As in you and your husband." "He told me to get out," I whispered. The pain in her silence was heartbreaking. "Where are you now?" she finally asked. "In a safe place. With a neighbor." Another pause. Not judgment, just surprise. "I see," she said gently. "Do you want me to come get you?" I pictured her arriving with questions, with worry, with all the pressure of explaining what went wrong. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to be anyone's problem. "No, Mama," I said quietly. "I just wanted to tell someone." "Oh, sweet girl," she whispered, and hearing those words broke me again. We talked for a few minutes, but I could feel her desire to ask more questions. I wasn't ready, so I ended the call early, promising we would speak again soon. After I hung up, I sat on the bed for a long time, letting the quiet fill me again. Family love is warm, but it can also be overwhelming when you've been distant for years. I needed time before facing them. That evening, I walked into the living room for the first time since the night I arrived. Aram was sitting on the couch with a book. He looked up when he heard me, but didn't react dramatically. He simply closed the book and smiled lightly. "Feeling better today?" he asked. "A little," I said. "Good." He always answered like that, simple, calm, without pressure. I sat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward, just slow. Finally, I said something I had been thinking for days. "I'm sorry for taking up so much space in your life right now." He shook his head. "You aren't taking anything." I lowered my eyes. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said gently. "Burden is when someone demands things. You've done the opposite. You've been too quiet, if anything." I almost smiled. He had a soft way of speaking, like every word was wrapped in care. I looked at the floor for a moment before saying, "I talked to my mother today." His expression softened. "That must have been difficult." I nodded. "It was." "Did it help a little?" I thought for a moment. "I think it helped me remember I still have a place in the world." He nodded again. "That's important." We sat in silence again, but it felt like progress, like I was learning how to breathe again. After a while, he stood up. "I was going to make dinner. Would you like to help?" The question surprised me more than it should have. No one had asked me to help with anything in a long time. At home, I cooked out of habit, out of duty, not because someone wanted to do it with me. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that." We cooked together slowly, quietly. The kitchen felt warm with the sound of boiling water and the soft clink of dishes. At one point, while cutting vegetables, he said, "You're very careful when you work with knives." I looked up, startled. "Oh, I didn't know that." "It shows you're thoughtful," he said. I didn't know why, but that simple observation made something warm settle inside me. No one had noticed small things about me in so long. Small things that weren't tied to expectations or criticism. Just noticed. After dinner, we washed the dishes side by side. Something about the simple routine felt grounding. When we finished, he dried his hands and looked at me. "You seem more peaceful today," he said softly. "Do I?" I asked. "Yes." And quietly, without thinking, I admitted, "It's the first peaceful day I've had in years." His face changed, not with pity, but with understanding. And that made it easier to breathe. Later that night, I lay in the guest room, thinking about those words. The first peaceful day in years. How many years had I spent pretending everything was fine? How many times had I swallowed my disappointment because it felt easier than confrontation? How often had I convinced myself loneliness was normal? I remembered how, in the beginning of our marriage, my husband and I used to talk about everything. We would sit on the balcony for hours, planning our future, imagining the kind of life we wanted to build. But somewhere along the way, we stopped sharing dreams and started just sharing space.
Not the same thing.
Not even close. I wondered when he stopped loving me, or when I stopped feeling loved. Maybe those two moments were the same. Maybe they weren't. The truth is, most marriages don't break in a single day. They break slowly, gently, like paper tearing soundlessly. I realized then that what happened that night wasn't the beginning. It was the end of a long, quiet unraveling. Over the next few days, Aram and I settled into a gentle routine. He left for work in the morning. I would clean up the dishes or water the plants on his porch. Sometimes I would take a short walk, just to feel the sun on my face. Other times I stayed in the guest room, thinking, remembering, and trying to untangle the knots inside me. Every evening when he returned, he checked on me not with big questions, but with small kindnesses. How was your day? Did you eat? Do you want to watch something? Do you need space? He always gave me options.
Control. Choice.
Something I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, we sat outside on his porch. The sky was turning orange, and the neighborhood was quiet. For a long time, we didn't speak. Then he said, almost casually, "You know, I heard something that night." My heart froze. He looked straight ahead, not at me. "I didn't mean to," he continued gently. "I was on the porch. I heard him tell you to get out." I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," I whispered. "You don't have to apologize," he said. "It wasn't your fault." The way he said it steady, certain felt like he was giving me back a part of myself. After a moment, he added quietly, "I went inside for a while, but I kept checking outside the window. I didn't want you to feel watched, but I also didn't want you to be alone if you needed help." My breath caught in my throat. "You didn't even know me," I whispered. He finally looked at me, his expression calm but sincere. "You didn't need to know someone to be decent to them." I felt tears rise again, but softer this time. "Thank you," I murmured. He nodded lightly. "You don't have to thank me for something anyone should do. But not everyone would have done it. Not everyone would have noticed. Not everyone would have cared." I realized then that kindness is not about grand gestures. Sometimes, it's a quiet presence in the darkest moment. That night, after I returned to my room, I felt a shift inside me. Not a sudden change. Not a dramatic transformation. Just a soft, growing awareness. For years, I had accepted emotional neglect like it was normal, like it was part of marriage, like it was my fault for wanting more. But now, someone who owed me nothing showed me more care in a week than my husband had shown in years. And that realization hurt.
Deeply.
Quietly. Honestly. It made me question everything I had accepted. Everything I had endured quietly. Everything I believed about loyalty and love. I didn't want to replace one man with another. This wasn't about romance. This wasn't about escape. It was about rediscovering myself. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, I was seeing who I really was. A woman who deserved kindness. A woman who deserved safety. A woman who didn't have to apologize for needing care. Days turned into a week, and the rising tension inside me became clearer. I couldn't stay at Aram's place forever. I couldn't return to my husband without understanding what I truly wanted. And I couldn't hide from my family much longer. Something had to change. Something had to be faced. I just didn't know which truth I was ready to face first. And that was the beginning of the real conflict, the slow, quiet unraveling that would lead me back to the life I had left behind, and the truth waiting inside it. I sat on Mr. Hale's couch for a long time that afternoon. The air felt quiet, almost too quiet, like the world was waiting for me to breathe again. He made me a cup of warm tea and placed it on the small table beside me. I wrapped my hands around the cup, not to drink it, but because the warmth grounded me. It reminded me that I was still here, still real, still someone. He didn't hover over me or try to talk too much. He just sat on the chair across from me, giving me space. His presence alone felt like a blanket, soft, gentle, reassuring. After a few minutes, he finally spoke. "If you want to call someone, you can," he said quietly. "Or, if you just want to sit, that's fine too." I stared at the tea. "I don't know who to call," I whispered. He nodded like he understood without needing an explanation. A few minutes passed, and then more tears escaped my eyes. Not loud sobs this time, just quiet streams. I couldn't stop no matter how hard I tried. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping my cheeks. "I don't know why I keep crying." "You've held too much inside for too long," he said gently. "Sometimes it comes out all at once." I looked at him, and the truth of his words hit me. I had held so much inside. All the small hurts, all the silent nights, all the moments I swallowed my voice. When James dismissed me, when he pretended not to notice my loneliness, when he brushed past my feelings like they were dust on a shelf. My heart had been carrying too much for too long. I took a shaky breath. I always thought marriage meant you stay, even when it's hard, but I didn't think it meant this. Mr. Hale folded his hands in his lap. Marriage should feel like a partnership, not a punishment. His words made something shift inside me. Something small but important. I tucked it away, not ready to look at it fully yet. After some time, I stood up. "I think I should go back," I said softly. Not to him. Just to get clothes. My things. To feel like a person again. He didn't question me. He simply nodded. "I'll walk with you," he said. We stepped outside together. The afternoon sun was beginning to fade, casting a warm light across the neighborhood. It should have been a peaceful scene, but my chest tightened with every step. I didn't know what I would find when I reached the house. Would James be there? Would he ignore me? Would he pretend nothing happened? I wasn't sure which option scared me more. When we turned the corner and my house came into view, I froze. The front door was open, not wide, but slightly ajar, swinging gently with the breeze. My heart dropped. Mr. Hale noticed and stepped a little closer to me. "Do you want me to check?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. He walked ahead while I stood back. He pushed the door open slowly, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. He took a few cautious steps inside, then came back out. "It's empty," he said softly. "You can come in." I followed him, my footsteps light, almost fearful. The living room was quiet. The kitchen was still. It was like the house had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Then I saw it on the dining table. A note. My stomach clenched. I walked toward it slowly. My hands trembled as I lifted the small piece of paper. The message was short. "I need space.
Don't contact me.
James." Just one sentence. One cold sentence from the man I had lived with, loved, cooked for, stood beside for years. A man who once promised to protect me, cherish me, hold me through storms. I swallowed hard. My throat felt thick and dry. It was strange this moment should have shattered me. It should have broken me into pieces. But instead, it felt like something inside me finally went quiet. A strange stillness washed over me, a kind I had not felt in a very long time. I folded the note and placed it on the table again. Mr. Hale stood behind me silently, as if waiting for me to guide the moment. "Can you help me pack a few things?" I asked softly. He nodded. We walked to the bedroom. My nightgown from last night lay crumpled over the chair where James had thrown it after pulling me outside. I stared at it for a moment, then looked away. I packed slowly. Not because I had too many things, but because every item held a memory, some warm, many painful. I folded clothes, gathered my essentials, and placed them carefully into a small suitcase. When I finished, I stood in the middle of the room, looking around. This was the place where I thought I would build a family. This was the place where I prayed things would get better. This was the place where I kept trying, even when my heart was tired. "Ready?" Mr. Hale asked gently. I nodded. We walked out together. I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I might hesitate. And I didn't want to hesitate anymore. Outside, the sun had dipped lower, and the sky was turning soft shades of orange and pink. The world looked calmer than I felt. Mr. Hale carried my suitcase without saying a word. I followed him down the path, closing the small chapter of my life with each step. But just as we were about to turn onto the sidewalk, a car pulled into the driveway. My breath caught. It was James. He stepped out of the car slowly, his eyes landing on my suitcase, then on me, then on Mr. Hale. A silence hung between us like a heavy curtain. "What's going on?" James asked. His voice was not angry but confused. For the first time in a long while, I didn't shrink. I didn't fold into myself. I didn't try to explain or defend or fix anything. I stood still, steady, quiet, and I waited for him to continue. James stood near the car door, one hand still gripping the handle, as if he wasn't sure whether to stay or leave. His eyes moved from my face to the suitcase, to Mr. Hale standing quietly beside me. For a moment, his expression was unreadable, some strange mix of confusion, irritation, and something else he didn't want to show. "What's going on?" he repeated, this time with a sharper edge. I didn't answer immediately. My heart was beating fast, but my body felt strangely calm. Maybe it was because I no longer expected anything from him. Maybe it was because something inside me had already let go. Or maybe it was simply because I was too tired to argue. Mr. Hale didn't say a word. He waited, letting me lead. I took a slow breath. "I'm leaving," I said softly. James blinked, as if he needed a moment to process the words. "Leaving? Why?" The question hit me harder than it should have.
Why?
He had thrown me out of the house last night, in the dark, barefoot, in nothing but a nightgown. And now he was asking why? I felt something shift inside me. A quiet ache. The ache of someone realizing the other person truly didn't understand the damage they caused. Or worse, didn't care. "You told me to leave," I said. "You locked the door behind me." He straightened his shoulders. I was angry. "I know," I said. "But you still did it." He scoffed under his breath. "So what? You're blowing it out of proportion." There it was. The dismissal. The minimization. The refusal to take responsibility. It was familiar, too familiar. And it wrapped around my chest like a cold chain. "James," I said quietly, "you didn't just yell. You pushed me outside. You didn't let me back in." It was the middle of the night. He waved his hand, already impatient. "You're being dramatic. It was just a fight. Couples fight." A couple of neighbors walking their dogs slowed down, sensing the tension. James noticed them and lowered his voice, not out of respect for me, but to protect his own image. "Can we discuss this inside?" he said through clenched teeth. "I'm not going inside," I replied. His jaw tightened. "So you're running away. That's what this is." I felt Mr. Hale subtly shift beside me, not threatening, just grounding. His quiet presence made me feel less alone. "I'm not running," I said. "I'm stepping away from something that hurts me." James let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, please. Don't make yourself sound like the victim. You always do this, you twist things to make me look like the bad guy." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had once believed would be my safe place. The man I hoped would be gentle, patient, understanding. I saw none of that in his eyes now. "I never tried to make you look bad," I said softly. "I tried to love you." He scoffed again, more aggressively this time. "Well, you're doing a great job of embarrassing me in front of the whole neighborhood." That sentence fell heavy. Not. "I'm sorry." Not. "Are you okay?" Not. "How can we fix this?" Just, "You're embarrassing me." My chest tightened painfully. Mr. Hale finally spoke, his voice calm. "She isn't embarrassing you, James. She's just taking care of herself." James turned sharply toward him. "Stay out of this. This is between me and my wife." "Last night," Mr. Hale said evenly, "you made it everyone's business when you threw her outside." The air went cold. Even James didn't have an immediate reply. His eyes darted around, realizing people were within earshot. His face reddened, Not from shame, but from anger.
He pointed at me.
You told him? Seriously? You went crying to the neighbor instead of talking to your husband. I had no choice, I whispered. I was alone outside. Well, you could have waited, he snapped. I was shivering, I said. It was cold.
So what? He said.
I didn't think it was that serious. You make everything sound worse than it is. There it was again, the same old sentence, everything is your fault, because he didn't think it was serious. My stomach twisted. I took a small breath. James, I'm leaving for now. I need space. I need to feel safe. Safe, he repeated with disbelief. You're acting like I'm some monster. You threw me out, I said quietly. I didn't imagine that. He clenched his jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitching.
Fine.
If you want to leave, go. But don't expect me to chase after you when you realize you've overreacted. I'm not asking you to chase me, I said. I'm asking you to let me go. He shrugged, pretending to be indifferent. Do whatever you want. You always do. He walked past me, brushing my shoulder harder than necessary. Then he stomped up the porch steps and slammed the door so loudly the windows rattled. The sound echoed through my chest. For a moment, I stood still, staring at the closed door. Not because I doubted my decision, but because the finality of it settled heavily inside me. The man I loved was gone. Or maybe he was never really who I believed he was. Mr. Hale touched my arm gently. Let's go, he said. I nodded slowly.
Yes.
I'm ready. We walked away from the house together. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. We walked down the quiet sidewalk, my suitcase rolling gently behind us. Each step felt like it echoed somewhere inside me. Not loudly, not painfully, more like something settling, something shifting into a place it should have been long ago. The wind brushed against my arms, cool but not harsh. It carried the soft smell of evening dust, distant cooking, a hint of something warm. It reminded me that the world kept moving even when my little world had cracked open. Mr. Hale didn't speak right away. He let the silence breathe, let it exist. That alone felt like kindness. After a few steps, he finally said, You handled that with strength. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because I hardly felt strong. I felt drained. Hollow. A little fragile. I didn't feel strong, I said quietly. I just felt tired. He nodded. Sometimes tired is what pushes a person to make the right decision. We kept walking until we reached his porch. He opened the door for me, not in a grand, dramatic gesture, just gentle, respectful, and natural. Once inside, I set my suitcase down by the wall. The house felt warm, softly lit, lived in. There were small details everywhere, books, framed photos, a blanket draped over the couch. It didn't feel perfect. It felt human. And strangely, that made me breathe a little easier. Would you like some water? He asked. I nodded. My throat was dry. Maybe from emotion. Maybe from the weight of everything that had just happened. He disappeared into the kitchen, and I walked to the window. Outside, the sky had settled into deep blue. A street lamp flickered on, casting a soft glow on the quiet road. I watched a cat walk across a fence, careful and unhurried. I envied that cat, moving without fear, going wherever it chose. When Mr. Hale returned with a glass of water, I took it slowly. Thank you, I said. He sat in the armchair across from me. You're safe here. You don't have to rush into any decisions tonight. I nodded again, feeling a lump rise in my throat. I used to think, I said softly, that if I tried hard enough, James would change. Or at least that he would see me. Really see me. That's a heavy thing to carry alone, he said. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly. I pressed them together to steady them. I didn't want him to be the bad guy, I whispered. I didn't want to admit that the person I loved could hurt me like that. It's hard to let go of the version of someone you believed in, he said gently. His voice carried no judgment, no suggestion, and no pressure. Just understanding. And that alone made tears gather again behind my eyes. I blinked them away. I thought marriage meant staying, I said. Staying through the rough parts. Staying loyal. Staying patient. Marriage should be a place where both people feel safe, he replied. Not afraid. Not discarded. A silence settled between us again. But it wasn't awkward. It was quiet.
Soft.
A silence that let me breathe. After a moment, I asked, "Do you think he'll ever realize what he did?" Mr. Hale took a slow breath. Some people only see their mistakes when they lose what they took for granted. My chest tightened at those words, not because I wanted James to chase me or beg or apologize, but because deep down, I knew he might never understand. And maybe that was the part that hurt the most. I sat with that thought for a long moment. Eventually, I whispered, "I didn't deserve that." "No," he said firmly. "You didn't." Hearing someone else say it out loud, without hesitation, made something inside me unfold. A small, fragile truth I had pushed down too many times. I didn't deserve it, and I didn't need to accept it. As the evening grew darker, I felt the exhaustion settle deeper. Not just physical tiredness, but emotional. The kind that comes after years of carrying quiet disappointments, swallowed tears, and unspoken needs. "You should rest," he said gently. "I'll set up the guest room for you." "You don't have to," I murmured. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." That simple sentence warmed my chest. Not because of romantic undertones, there were none, but because it had been so long since someone offered kindness without expecting anything in return. He walked to the hallway and I followed. The guest room was simple but cozy. A small bed, a wooden dresser, a soft lamp on the table. The sheets looked fresh, folded neatly. He set a few things down and turned toward me. "If you need anything," he said, "I'll be in the next room." "Thank you," I whispered. He smiled softly and stepped out, closing the door partway. I sat on the bed, hands in my lap, staring at the wall. For a long time, I didn't move. I just listened to the quiet house, to my own breathing, to the slow settling of everything that had cracked open today. Then, as the room dimmed and my thoughts softened, one truth drifted gently through my mind. I had finally stepped away from a life that was shrinking me. And even though the road ahead was uncertain, for the first time in years, I felt the smallest hint of something like hope. That night, I lay on the guest bed staring at the ceiling. The faint glow of the lamp cast soft shadows that moved gently with the breeze coming through the window. The room smelled faintly of lavender, something peaceful and calming. It felt almost unreal to be in a place that wasn't filled with tension, with quiet anger, with a constant feeling that something could go wrong at any moment. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for footsteps. I wasn't waiting for the sound of a door closing too hard. I wasn't waiting for the moment when my feelings would be dismissed again. The silence felt different here. It wasn't sharp. It didn't cut. It simply existed. I placed my hand on my chest, feeling how my heartbeat slowly softened. I didn't realize how much I had been bracing myself for so long, how much of my body had learned to stay tense, ready for the next argument, the next wave of coldness, the next quiet punishment. Now, lying in that small guest room, my body didn't know how to relax. It took time. It took slow breathing. It took letting the quiet sink into me, piece by fragile piece. At some point, I drifted into sleep. When I woke, the room was bathed in a soft morning light. The air felt fresh, cool. A bird chirped somewhere outside. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then everything came rushing back, not painfully, just with a soft ache. I sat up slowly. There was a gentle knock on the door.
"Come in," I said.
Mr. Hale opened it just a little, his voice warm. "I made breakfast. Only if you want some." I nodded. "Thank you. I'll be there." He didn't linger. He stepped away, giving me space. I stood up and walked to the mirror. My face looked tired but softer somehow. My eyes were a little puffy, but there was something else, a quiet steadiness I hadn't seen in a long time. I washed my face, brushed my hair, and walked to the kitchen. The table was set simply. Toast, eggs, a small pot of tea. He was standing by the stove, pouring hot water into 2 cups. "You didn't have to do all this," I said. "I know," he replied, "but it's easier to face a morning with something warm in your hands." That sentence touched me more than it should have. I sat down. The first bite of food felt strange, like my body wasn't sure if it deserved comfort so soon after pain. But as I ate, the tightness in my chest eased a bit. It reminded me that life keeps moving, even when parts of you feel stuck. After a while, he sat across from me. "If you want," he said gently, "I can help you look for somewhere temporary. A hotel, or maybe a friend you trust." I shook my head slowly. I don't have many close friends. Not the kind I can show up to with a suitcase. He nodded. He didn't push. "You can stay here for a few days. As long as you need. There's no rush." My eyes stung with gratitude. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're a guest. And you're going through something hard." I took a small breath. "Thank you. Truly." He smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me. A kindness isn't a transaction." That sentence settled inside me like a small light. We ate in quiet after that. A gentle quiet. A quiet with space to breathe. When I finished my tea, I stood up. I should probably go check on my messages. See if James said anything. He looked at me with steady eyes. "Do you want to check alone?" I nodded. Back in the guest room, I picked up my phone. There were 3 messages from James. None of them said sorry. The first one said, "So, you left with the neighbor? Really?" The second said, "If you want attention, you got it." The third, sent an hour later, said, "Fine. Stay there. Do whatever you want." I stared at the screen for a long time. The words hit with the same coldness I had always felt from him. There was no remorse, no understanding, no recognition of the pain he caused. Just blame, accusation, dismissal. A quiet heaviness settled over me. I set the phone down and sat on the bed, breathing slowly. I felt something in my chest crack, not like breaking, but like opening. A small truth. Clear and painful. He wasn't going to understand. He wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to treat this moment as something serious. The man I had married wasn't just angry or stressed. He was someone who didn't see me, not truly. And maybe he never had. There was a soft knock on the door again.
"Come in," I said.
Mr. Hales stepped inside just a little. "Are you okay?" I hesitated. Then I nodded gently. "I think I'm beginning to see things clearly." He didn't ask what that meant. He didn't try to interpret it. He just nodded. "When you're ready, we can talk. Or sit. Or go for a walk. Whatever you need today." My voice softened. A walk would be nice. We stepped outside a few minutes later. The morning sun warmed the sidewalk. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, washed in the pale light of a new day. As we walked, each step felt like I was moving toward something, not a future yet, not a plan, but a beginning. A fragile beginning. A quiet one. But mine.
For a long while, we didn't speak.
And in that silence, I realized something important. Sometimes the world doesn't end when someone walks away. Sometimes it begins. Softly, slowly, gently. In the space they leave behind. I sat there on Emma's couch for a long time, just listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan. It was almost comforting, in a strange way. My mind kept going back to the door, the sound of it shutting behind me. The cold floor, my own bare feet stepping on it. I wondered if Mark was even thinking about me right now. I wondered if he had calmed down. I wondered if he regretted anything. But then another thought came. A quiet, painful one. I wondered if he was relieved that I was gone. That was the thought that made my chest tighten. Emma came back and placed a soft blanket around my shoulders. It smelled like lavender, like something safe. She sat down beside me slowly, as if she did not want to overwhelm me. We did not speak for a while. I stared at the floor. She stared at me, but not in a way that made me uncomfortable. It was more like she was waiting, allowing me the time to breathe. After a few minutes, she asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" Her voice was gentle, not demanding, just open. I closed my eyes for a moment and let out a soft breath. I do not know where to start," I said. "That is all right," she replied. "Start anywhere. Start with how you feel right now." How I felt. That was a question I had been avoiding. Because my feelings were messy, heavy, confusing. I feel lost, I whispered. I feel like everything fell apart so quickly. I do not even understand what happened. Emma nodded. She did not rush me. She did not comment. She simply let me continue at my own pace. I never thought he would do something like that, I said softly. Not like that. Not throwing me out. My voice cracked at the last few words. And even though I tried, I could not stop a small tear from sliding down my cheek. Emma reached out and placed her hand on mine. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like someone had opened a window in a room with no air. You did not deserve that, she said quietly. Her words hit me harder than I expected, because they were kind
And true.
and I had not heard anything kind in hours. I covered my face with my hands for a moment, not because I was embarrassed, but because the emotions were finally pushing through the wall I was trying to hold up. I took a slow breath, then another, and when I removed my hands, Emma was still sitting there,
Still calm.
still patient.
Can I ask something? She said.
I nodded. Has he ever talked to you that way before? Her question surprised me, not because of the words, but because someone finally asked. Someone finally cared enough to ask. I shook my head. Not like tonight.
He gets upset sometimes. He gets stressed.
But he has never pushed me out. Never told me to leave. Emma listened carefully. Her expression did not change. There was no judgment. Sometimes, she said softly, people show a part of themselves only when they reach a breaking point. And sometimes that part, it tells us something important, something we should not ignore. I looked down at my hands. I understood what she meant, but the truth was heavy. And even though I knew she was right, it was still hard to accept. I keep thinking he will come looking for me, I said. He will realize what he did and come knocking on the door. Emma tilted her head gently. And if he does, what will you want him to say? Her question was warm, not pushing, just thoughtful. I took a long moment before speaking. I do not know, I admitted. An apology, maybe. Or maybe I just want him to understand how much he hurt me. Emma nodded slowly. That makes sense. I leaned back against the couch and wrapped the blanket tighter around myself. My body was still tense, but it was slowly beginning to settle. Outside, the night was completely silent. No cars. No footsteps. Just calm darkness. A strange part of me wondered if Mark was asleep. If he had simply gone to bed. If he was brushing his teeth right now as if nothing had happened. The thought made something inside me ache. I am sorry, I said softly to Emma. I did not mean to bring all this into your night. She gave a small, reassuring smile. You do not have to apologize. You are safe here. That is what matters. Her words made my eyes sting again. But this time, the tears were soft. Not painful. I took another breath. A deeper one. And for the first time that night, I felt like I could breathe without shaking. Emma stood up for a moment and walked to the kitchen. I could hear the faint sound of the kettle turning on, followed by the soft click of mugs touching the counter. The small, everyday sounds made the room feel warmer, more familiar, almost like I had been here many times before. When she came back, she was carrying 2 cups of warm tea, chamomile, with a hint of honey. She placed one in my hands carefully, as if she didn't want to startle me. Thank you, I whispered. Drink slowly, she said with a gentle smile. It helps calm the body. I held the cup for a moment before taking a sip. The warmth spread through my fingers first, then my chest, then my throat. It felt like a small piece of comfort in a night full of fear and confusion. Emma sat down across from me this time, legs crossed, posture relaxed. She wanted me to feel like we were having a quiet conversation, not an interrogation. Do you want to tell me what happened before he pushed you out? She asked softly. Her voice had no urgency, just patience. I closed my eyes for a second, thinking back. It already felt far away, like something that happened in a different house, to a different couple. But the memory was still sharp enough to hurt. We were arguing, I said quietly, about something small. Something so small I feel almost embarrassed saying it out loud. Emma nodded slowly. Sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest feelings. I swallowed. She was right. She didn't even know the story yet, and she was already right. I took a long breath and continued. It started because I asked him if he could help me with the dishes tomorrow morning.
Just that.
He was already stressed from work, and I guess my timing was bad. He got annoyed. I tried to calm things down, but the more I tried, the more irritated he became. I paused. The words felt heavy, but saying them out loud made the air around me feel lighter. He said I was always bothering him, that I did not understand how tired he was. I told him I was tired too, and I guess that made him angrier. Emma didn't interrupt. She just listened, her expression soft and attentive. Then he said he needed space.
I thought he meant just a walk outside.
I never imagined he meant pushing me out and locking the door. My voice trembled at the memory. The cold air, the sudden shock, the feeling of the door closing behind me, and me standing there in nothing but a thin nightgown. Emma breathed out slowly, as if she felt the weight too. "No one should treat you like that," she said quietly. I stared at the cup in my hands. The tea was still warm, but I felt small and fragile. "I know," I whispered, "but part of me still keeps trying to defend him. I keep telling myself he didn't mean it, that he was just overwhelmed, that he'll feel awful in the morning." Emma leaned forward slightly. "That is natural," she said. "When you love someone, your heart tries to protect that love, even from the truth." Her words made me hold my breath, because it was exactly what I was feeling. "I'm scared," I said softly. "Of him?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "Of what this means for us. For our marriage. For everything we built." Emma nodded again, her eyes warm. "That fear makes sense. When something breaks suddenly, even if it's not your fault, you still feel responsible for cleaning up the pieces." I felt my throat tighten again, but this time I didn't cry. It was more like my body was finally letting me release the truth I had been holding inside. We sat there in silence for a little while. Not awkward silence. Not tense silence. Just quiet. The kind of silence where your heart finally slows down after being overwhelmed for too long. I took another sip of my tea, holding the cup with both hands. I could feel the warmth returning to me, slowly but steadily. "Will you stay here tonight?" Emma asked. Her voice was soft and careful. She wasn't assuming anything. She wasn't forcing anything. I nodded slowly. "If it's not too much trouble." "It isn't," she said. "You're not alone. Not tonight." My chest softened at her words. And, for the first time since the door closed on me, I felt safe. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the pain had gone away. But because someone saw me. Someone cared. And that alone made the night a little less dark. Emma stood up after a moment, slowly gathering the extra blanket, adjusting it around my shoulders as if she were handling something fragile. The fabric was soft, and the warmth settled over me gently. "You should rest a little," she said quietly. "Your body has been through shock." I nodded, though rest felt impossible. My mind was still replaying every second of what had happened. The push, the cold air, the lock clicking, the slow walk down the street, the glow of Emma's porch light like a tiny lighthouse in the dark. But I appreciated her softness. It made the world feel less cruel. "I don't know how to sleep after something like this," I murmured. "You don't have to," she replied. "Just lie down for a bit. Your body will take what it needs." I leaned back against the couch cushions, pulling the blanket tighter around myself. Emma didn't turn off the lights completely. She dimmed them instead, leaving a soft glow in the corner warm and safe. Something about the dimness made the room feel like a quiet shelter. Emma sat in the nearby armchair, close enough that I didn't feel alone, but far enough that she wasn't crowding me. She respected silence. Not everyone does. "You know," she said after a long moment, her voice gentle and low, "it takes a lot of strength to walk toward help instead of pretending things are fine." I let the words settle. Strength. It didn't feel like strength. It felt like survival, or instinct, or pure exhaustion. "I didn't feel strong," I whispered. "I just felt lost." That's what strength looks like sometimes, she replied. I breathed in slowly, feeling the warmth of the teacup still lingering in my hands even though I had set it down. Do you think he'll come looking for me? I asked quietly. I wasn't sure if I wanted him to. The thought of facing him made my stomach twist, but the idea that he wouldn't care enough to check frightened me even more. Emma's voice stayed calm. I can't say what he'll do, but I can tell you this: whatever happens next, you won't face it alone tonight. Her certainty gave me a strange kind of comfort. Not hope, exactly, but steadiness. I pulled the blanket a little closer and let my head rest against the back of the couch. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe without fear shaping each inhale. Outside, the night was quiet. No voices, no footsteps, just the distant hum of a street lamp and the gentle rustle of wind brushing past the windows. Emma? I said softly. Yes, thank you. I don't think you know what this means to me. She gave a small, warm smile. You don't have to thank me. Kindness isn't something a person earns. It's something we give because it's needed. Her words landed gently in my chest. Kindness had felt like a rare thing lately. Hearing someone say it so simply, so honestly, made something inside me unclench. I let my eyes drift half-closed. Not asleep, just resting, letting thoughts pass instead of holding on to them. A little while later, Emma stood and began quietly tidying the kitchen, her movements slow and soft so she wouldn't disturb me. The sound of running water, the faint clink of a spoon being rinsed, these small, domestic noises felt strangely soothing. They reminded me of simpler moments in my own home, little patterns of everyday life before everything felt so heavy. My mind wandered, not toward James, but toward myself. What had I allowed to happen? What signs had I ignored? How had something so small spiraled into something so cruel? The questions didn't blame me. They just floated, like pieces of a puzzle still scattered on a table. I heard Emma's footsteps returning. She wasn't rushing me. She wasn't waiting for me to talk. She was simply here, present. She sat back down in the armchair, pulling a light throw blanket over her legs. If you're not tired, she said softly, you can talk. If you are tired, you can rest. Either is fine. Her words gave me permission to simply exist. No expectations. No judgments. I wasn't sure what I needed, so I just asked the simplest question my heart had been holding. Why do people hurt the ones they say they love? Emma exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that carries both sadness and understanding. I don't know, she said softly. Some people are gentle. Some people are wounded. And some people are both. But love, real love, is not supposed to make you afraid. Her voice was almost a whisper. Not dramatic. Just true. I felt that truth settle deep inside me. Not sharp. Not painful. Just clarifying. I didn't say anything else. The room didn't need more words. The quiet was enough. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Time felt different in that moment, like it wasn't measuring anything anymore. Slowly, gently, without even realizing it, my eyes closed fully. The blanket was warm. My breathing softened. The couch felt safe beneath me. And for the first time since the door slammed shut behind me, my body allowed itself to rest. I woke up to the faintest touch of sunlight peeking through Emma's curtains. It took a moment for my mind to understand where I was. The blanket around me, the quiet hum of her refrigerator, the softness of her living room light. Not my home, not his voice, not the heavy silence of a tense marriage. Just warmth. Safe, quiet warmth. Emma was sitting at the dining table, a cup of coffee between her hands. She wasn't staring at me, wasn't studying me. She was simply giving me the space to wake up without pressure. It was the kind of respect that felt unfamiliar but comforting. Good morning, she said softly when she noticed I was awake. I sat up slowly, the blanket still wrapped around my shoulders. Did I sleep long? A few hours, she said. Your body needed it. I nodded. She wasn't wrong. My body felt lighter, but my mind still felt like it was walking through a fog. Emma walked over and placed a warm mug of tea in my hands. chamomile again, gentle, soothing. Something about the consistency made me feel grounded. Did anything happen last night? I asked quietly. My voice seemed too soft for the room. Too unsure. Emma looked at me for a moment before answering. Your husband came home. I heard the car door around 2 in the morning. I swallowed. My fingers tightened a little around the cup. Did he knock on your door? No, she said kindly. He didn't come looking for you. Not last night. I stared at the cup. My tea rippled slightly as my hands trembled. A small part of me, a part one didn't want to admit to, had hoped he would come. Hoped he would be worried. Hoped there would be some sign that he regretted what he did. But silence told its own story, one I could no longer pretend not to hear. Emma sat down beside me, leaving a gentle distance. Not everything hurts because it's meant to destroy you, she said. Some things hurt because they're meant to wake you. Her words settled slowly, and they didn't sting. They clarified. I took a long breath. I should go home, I said quietly. I need clothes, my things, and I need to see if he'll even look at me. Emma nodded without hesitation. You don't have to go alone, she said. Her tone wasn't forceful, just steady, supportive. I looked at her and saw only kindness, not pity, not assumption, just human decency, something I had forgotten the shape of. I would appreciate that, I whispered.
She stood.
Then finish your tea. I'll grab my keys. It was early morning when we stepped outside. The air was cool. Birds were beginning their quiet songs. The neighborhood felt peaceful, the kind of peace that contrasts sharply with the unrest inside a person's heart. I wrapped Emma's borrowed sweater tighter around myself as we walked toward my house. Each step felt heavier the closer we got. Not because I feared him, but because I feared what the silence would mean. When we reached the front yard, I paused. My house looked the same. Quiet. Still. Unmoved by the chaos it held the night before. Emma stayed beside me, her hands in her pockets, waiting gently. I stepped onto the porch and reached for the door handle. It turned easily. He hadn't locked it after all.
Just me.
Only me. Something small in my chest cracked a little more. The house smelled like him, faint cologne, coffee, a bit of dust from yesterday's unopened windows. It should have felt familiar, comforting, but it felt distant. He wasn't in the living room, not in the kitchen, not by the hallway. I found him sitting in the bedroom, legs spread slightly, and face blank, staring at the floor as though it was telling him secrets he didn't want to hear. When he looked up and saw me, his expression didn't shift in the way I wished it would. No relief, no guilt that softened into apology, just cold surprise, and a touch of annoyance, as if I had interrupted something. You're back, he said. No warmth, no regret. I felt my heart fold inward. He stood up slowly, running a hand through his hair. You didn't have to make this a big deal, he said. I just needed space last night. Space? Throwing me out in the middle of the night was space. Emma took a subtle step back, remaining in the hallway. Present, but not interfering. I was outside, I said softly. In the cold. In my nightgown. You locked the door behind me. He sighed sharply, as if I were the one being unreasonable. Well, you shouldn't have kept pushing me. You know how I get when I'm overwhelmed. There it was. The shift. The inversion. The familiar, manipulative twist, making the harm my responsibility. I had heard this tone before. But last night's cold air had cleared something inside me. A fog had lifted. No, I said gently. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just true. That's not an excuse. He blinked at me, confused by my calmness. He was used to me folding, softening, and apologizing for things I never caused. I came back for my things, I said. My voice trembled, but it didn't break. You're leaving, he scoffed. You're actually going to throw away our marriage over one small fight? And it hit me with heartbreaking clarity. He would never see what he did, not because he couldn't, but because he wouldn't. Yes, I whispered, because I don't feel safe with you. He stared at me, stunned. Not because of what I said, but because I dared to say it. You can't be serious, he said. His voice cracked, but not from remorse. From disbelief.
I didn't argue. I didn't justify.
I didn't repeat myself. Clarity does not need volume. It only needs honesty. I took a small bag from the closet, Emma's sweater still around me, and placed a few essentials inside. A few clothes. My documents. My phone charger. My dignity. My choice. When I stepped back into the hallway, Emma looked at me with quiet encouragement. No judgment. No pressure. Just presence. As we walked toward the door, my husband said one last thing, the final thread snapping in the quietest way. You'll come back. You always do. I turned to him, my voice trembling with a soft truth. Not this time. Walking down the steps with Emma beside me felt like walking away from a storm that no longer scared me, just tired me. The morning air felt different now. Cool, but not cold. Fresh, but not empty. Emma didn't ask how I felt. She didn't force conversation. She simply walked beside me, step by step, giving me room to breathe. When we reached her house again, she opened the door for me and said quietly, "You did something incredibly brave today." I shook my head. It doesn't feel brave. That's because bravery rarely feels like bravery when you're in it, she said gently. It feels like survival, like shaking hands, like a tired heart. I sat on her couch again, the same place I had landed the night before, frightened, cold, and unwanted.
But now,
I wasn't cold, and I wasn't unwanted. I was sheltered, held by kindness.
seen.
Emma placed another warm cup of tea in my hands. Rest, she said. You don't have to decide the future today. Today, just heal. Her words were the softest place for my heart to land. I wrapped both hands around the cup and let myself breathe, slowly, steadily, freely. For the first time in a long time, people think leaving is the hardest part, but sometimes the hardest part is admitting how much you've endured. I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I started loving myself. Not loudly, not defiantly, but quietly, like a small light finding its way back home. Emma was not a miracle. She didn't fix my life. She didn't replace anything I lost. She simply opened a door when another one closed too forcefully. She offered tea, warmth, and silence. She showed me what simple decency feels like. And sometimes, that is enough to guide a person out of the dark. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know where the next chapter will take me. But I know this. I will never again shrink myself to fit inside someone else's storm. I will never again wait outside a locked door, hoping for warmth from someone who keeps choosing the cold. Kindness saved me. Clarity freed me. And stepping away, that was the moment I chose to live again. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.